Dear Muğla University students and esteemed fellows, today we got a guest lecturer from far away, from Muslim country, from Muslim world, Assistant Professor Hasinul Siddique from College of Banking and Finance from Muscat in Oman. He's a close friend of mine. He loves Turkey, and a couple of times he paid a visit here. Even if he settled down in Oman, he actually origins from India. And let me give the words to Hasinul Siddique. What will happen after COVID-19? What do you expect? What's your new world order in Arab parts? Please.
Well, Dr. Saleh, assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be on the panel and talking to you. You see, all the GCC economies, they are oil-based economies, and the current scenario, it's a very painful scenario. It's a disastrous situation in which we find ourselves, you know. In fact, oil prices have been declining since 2015. And, you know, because the incomes of the GCC countries, they are all dependent on oil. So our budget had been going awry. We were going wrong with the budget. There was a lot of deficit financing. There was a lot of pressure on goods and services. Aggregate demand was coming down. There was an exodus of workers, manpower from here, and so on and so forth. And I mean, it's like a final nail in the coffin that this COVID-19 has come, and, you know, different geopolitical implications. You know, there are no takers for oil now. The price of crude, you know, has gone to negative, and the Saudi and OPEC agreement, it fell apart. All right, there were no takers for it, and we find plenty of oil on Tango, which is on the high seas, tankers waiting, and you know, countries, they have limited capacity to store, and so on and so forth. So the oil market, of course, has given a big bang. Now the fact remains that in a place like Oman, because it's a desert country, and you know, our primary sector is almost negligent. We don't have agricultural areas, okay, where we can grow crops and all. I mean, there can be a few projects, greenhouse projects, but not on a large scale. Then we have what secondary sector manufacturing, again, is limited. Everything from tin to plane is imported. We only depend on the services. And the services sector, it diluted very, very quickly, you know. I'll just share with you a little bit of data which I have with me at the moment. In 2018, all right, growth rate of our GDP, Oman's GDP, was around 2%. And 2019, it has come down to 0.8%. And IMF is saying that, okay, next 2020, it could be negative, until it picks up again in 2021. But then we don't know what's going to happen now, what to talk of 2021. That's a long run scenario. If you see public debt in Oman, it's 70% of the GDP, which is again not a very encouraging sign. You have the fiscal deficit, that is around 18%, 17 to 18% of the GDP. You know, exports, 45% of the oil and gas, 45%, that is 21.7% of the GDP of total Oman. The exports are going to China. The Omani bond securities, which we call in Arabic sukuk, they have been purchased by the China. Our sovereign bonds are with the China. So if you take all the countries in the GCC, okay, you will find that China has the highest exposure to to Oman's finances. And of course, on top of that, we have this, COVID-19, and we have the subsidies, we have overspending. The government has to keep the governance going. Subsidies for tribal, subsidies for interior, subsidies for transport, for infrastructure. So the debt level is going up. And even if the resort deficit financing, there's a limit for it. Okay. Now what happens is Dr. Salih, you see, I'm giving you so many facts about the current situation, and the things are not looking very comfortable. It's a wait and watch situation. I mean, even if you compare in the neighborhood, UAE, United Arab Emirates, Dubai Abu Dhabi has sold its sovereign funds worth $7 billion. Qatar has sold its sovereign funds worth $10 billion. Saudi has sold it, and in Saudi Arabia, there's a lot of mismanagement. So I was just sharing with you that if you take the neighborhood, a lot of businesses are winding up. All right, companies are becoming bankrupt. Employees, they are being retrenched. The people are losing their gratuities, and some of the companies, they have refused to pay the gratuity. So what the employees do, they take a personal loan equivalent to the amount of gratuity from the bank, because here in the Gulf, all over the Gulf, the Khalij, the banks give you a personal loan against your salary. They don't ask you for any collateral. Your gratuity is your collateral. Now, suddenly somebody takes a loan. He comes to know his company is going to become bankrupt, or he has to leave. He takes a loan and he takes an exit. So plenty of bad debts. Balance sheets are going to be very bad this year. And we find that overall, there is a gloom, okay, because the aggregate demand has come down. And the government doesn't have enough funds because the oil prices are down. So government doesn't have enough funds to undertake, policies which are pump priming, which create employment opportunities, which push up the GDP. Already we have a weak manufacturing base. We are importing everything. So the inflation, the foreign exchange rates in other countries, they are going to get reflected in our economies. So you see, overall, it's a very sad situation. Now, if you see, in Oman, they have extended the lockdown till May, and India has extended it till 18th. And I know hundreds and thousands of Indians, they are just stranded. People have lost their jobs, and how they are surviving on charity and so on, they can't get out. All the flights are cancelled, And on the other hand, the government tells the companies, if your employees are stranded, you have to give them house rent, you have to provide them facilities, food, shelter. So ultimately, it's a very negative balance which is coming out. All is not well here in the Gulf. And you never know, this can give rise to another Arab Spring. Who knows? Because the things may take a negative turn suddenly. How long the common people, they are going to wait and watch, because they are so used to subsidies. All right, the fuel was very cheap, and so because the transport costs are low, so we find that all the best of the goods and services were affordable for a major sector of the population. Now the prices are rising. We have a system of what we call in Arabic kifala, sponsorship. Your sponsor may be your employer, and he invites you, he gives you the visa. Now, the sponsors are becoming bankrupt. So this is another situation where they need support from the government. At the moment, the government is taking short-term measures, like stimulus packages and all these things. So it is the same thing what we say in English. Don't give them fish, teach them how to fish. So the fact remains, if we focus on human capital development and all this, but all this is a long-term scenario. In the short term, what we need to do is somehow we need to open the economy in stages. And that is what Oman announced yesterday evening. Small shops, small businesses, they have to follow the social distancing. and they have to open up slowly. Otherwise, it was a complete lockdown. I can still see across my window, there's a huge jam, and probably the police is checking the permissions, the tickets, and all those things. So it has come at a very wrong time, and even in Ramadan, there is always demand picking up. Aggregate demand picks up, and there's a lot of travel, people going for Umrah, and spending last few days of Ramadan in Saudi Arabia. So there is a drastic cut, and it's a chain reaction. Flights are cancelled, hotel bookings are cancelled, all right, and these transporters and all the support activities, support services, they are over there. So we find it will take a long time for these logistics to come into picture. That's what I feel.
Thank you. The other issue I want to raise is, especially in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait,
yes,
and United States of Emirates, there are huge amount of foreign workers. Maybe in some countries, for 10 foreign workers, 1 to 10 or 1 to 7.
Yes.
And the thing is as well, people who are living there, the citizens of for example, United States of Emirates, are paid as a citizen, what we call the rentier state. It's a theory in political science.
Right.
As long as you paid by a state, because you are not paying a tax, rather the state are paying you, you don't need too much things from a democratic state or human rights or blah blah. Nothing matters. But I think this chain is broken. This will be broken anyway.
Yes, Doctor, you have asked me a very pertinent question. It reminds me of 2008 when there was a global debt crisis, and we had photographs coming all around, outside the airports, outside the hotels, outside the malls, where luxury and expensive cars were gathering dust. The expats just left. They parked their cars and they left. You are absolutely right. Now is also the same situation. You have around 2 to 3 million Indians only. 2 to 3 million Indians in UAE. That is the biggest group of expats. And then we find that, these expats who have lost their jobs, they are not in a position to pay the house rent. They are not in a position to pay the school fees. They are not in a position to maintain their expenses and so on, living expenses. So the government has told the companies, even here in Amman, the government has told the companies to keep supporting them with the house rents, with the food and all these things. Now that is very difficult, because some of these companies, they are Western companies. They are there to do the business. They are not there to do the charity. And plus, because India has extended the lockdown, how long they will keep on, providing support. So ultimately, the government has to come into picture. Now, the government here has come into picture. They are supporting the citizens. They have come up with the stimulus packages for the local Emirati people. They have come up with the packages for the local businesses. But on a micro level, person to person, it is very difficult to carry it and execute it out. So the embassies of different countries, they're enrolling the expat population. How many of them want to go? Like yesterday, we had a lot of repatriation flights for Pakistan. We have a lot of Indians waiting here because class 10 exams, they just got over, and for grade 12, many of the Indians, they move down to their country because they get the quota, the seats in their own, and unless you have done the grade 12 from India, you don't get quota, the seats in higher educational institutions. Then you have people on visit visas, you have people, dependents, old age, and so many. So overall, it's you can say around 2 to 3 million people will take an exit from the Gulf. Definitely, they are on the cards, and we don't know. We have local programs like Emiratization. In Oman, you have Omanization, where local people have to be absorbed into the job market. Now, it is very difficult, because just a random call to sack the expats and absorb the local people who do not have any expertise, who do not have any adequate knowledge of running these things, it becomes very difficult. So what will happen is, in the short run, there will be a big exodus, but in the long run, again, you will find expats coming back. So I wanted to share with you. And definitely, it is the same scenario in Kuwait, Saudi, UAE, and Oman.
All right. Okay. So is there anything about you want to mention about the rentier estate? What will you feature? I mean, if there is not enough funding from oil revenues to pay to citizens, so what happens to
Doctor, see, they have lived a life of opulence and extravagance. And it is very difficult to come down. A person, if his standard of living is going up, he finds it very comfortable. But when he feels the financial crunch, coming down is not easy. Now they have to compromise on their extravaganza, overspending, subsidies and all. Now that is not easy because the population will not accept the leaders doing it. So in the short run, what they're doing is they're selling off their assets. Just like I told you, okay, Abu Dhabi sold so many $1 billion and Saudi sold so many $1 billion and so on and so forth. So in the short term, this is a borrowing. And there is one more thing. Their currencies, all of them except Kuwait. Kuwait's currency, dinar, is pegged against a basket of currencies. But Oman, Saudi and all, currencies are pegged against the dollar. Now, if the dollar is going to collapse, so you can imagine what will happen to these currencies because of the high oil prices. Already Riyal is quite inflated. And Omani Riyal, of course, has a denomination of 1,000. So 1 Riyal, Omani Riyal, is equal to 100 Saudi Riyals. So this way also, it provides a push to the purchasing power. So it will be like devaluing the currency if that happens. So somehow there has not been enough room to diversify the economy away from the oil resources because tourism has its limits. The weather is hot. For 2-3 months, people can come and enjoy. Rest of the time, it's like, 45 plus. So you can't have enough tourism. You cannot have, other sources of incomes. They wanted education as an industry, but there's a lot of competition within the GCC states also. If you take OPEC, OPEC acts as a cartel and they compete with the other countries. But here within GCC, there's a lot of competition. So it is like we are cutting down the throats of each other and we are taking away the pie. So this way, these countries stand to lose. And Oman, with just a population of 4 million, including expats, the market is very small. But one thing I must say, Oman's market is quite resilient because other than the bonds and securities to China, Oman's banking system has not much exposure to outside multinationals. So whatever will happen within the country. This is maybe in the short run, they resort to printing of currency, they resort to more borrowings. Okay, the debt equity ratio will go up and things like that. But it's just a wait and watch situation. Things are so uncertain.
Okay, Hasinul, and lastly, I would like to see what you see in coming future. I mean, there are rumors we are reading. There's a new wave of capitalism, which we may call digital capitalism.
Right.
Or alternatively, some say deglobalization is coming. Isolation, new small city-states. I mean, there are a lot. I mean, some of them rumors as well. But I mean, what's in your mind?
Doctor, to be honest, you have asked me $1 million question, and you I might out. See, there is a strong link between economics, politics, and the global dynamics. Basically, I'm not in a position to comment whether it is this COVID-19 is a biological warfare, or it was the outcome of the trade war between US and China, or there is some conspiracy theory. There are so many theories which are floating in the air. The fact remains that at the ground level, we have to see that nobody sleeps hungry. Nobody sleeps hungry. Nobody is unemployed. So what will happen is people will, like they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So, there will be a lot of innovation. There will be a lot of hunt to have self-sufficiency and have self-employment rather than to be dependent on government subsidies and so on. People have learned it the hard way. Now, dynamics are changing. Those who were very faithful to the governments, they have been giving opinions and, views. Other than that, there are people who are, going back to the farms. There are people who are going back to their businesses. So, localized economies will be more suitable. On a local level, economies are going to be more suitable. And, just like you have a federation. Federation is a loose connected states. They act like a country, like you have the US, 50 states. Okay, so that could be a possibility. But here in the Arab world, you have tribal connections, you have tribal loyalties, and you have seen the World War I, you have seen the Ottoman Empire, and you have seen that now the dynamics are going back. If you take Qatar. When the Saudi closed their borders, Turkey alone in the world came to their help immediately. And you see, they got a lot of support, and that kept the economy going. And we find a lot of, there could be a shift towards democracy, I believe. There could be a shift towards democracy. People are, they have a lot to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Assistant Professor Hasinul Siddique from Muscat, for sharing your comments and what you see in the coming years and about the COVID post-pandemic period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for inviting me.